Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Sam Pittman, Arkansas, kicking off the 2024 college football season, playing Arkansas-Pine Bluff. And I think to start, there's a reason that there are some sports books that, look, we ain't even going to give you a line on this football game because Arkansas should be winning this game rather comfortably. That being said, I think there are some fascinating storylines to look for as Arkansas kicks off the 2024 season, especially as you're going on the road and playing a top 20 team in Oklahoma State during week 2. And it kind of takes me back to that Kent State performance week 2 for Arkansas in the 2023 season, where you saw Arkansas play a team that they were just by far superior to, but played really sloppy football. And that kind of bled into that loss against BYU the following week. You want to see Arkansas come out and really take care of business, which we fully expect them to do. But I think the biggest storyline is Bobby Petrino coming in as the offensive coordinator. And you talk about why to believe in Arkansas. You could talk about Taylen Green. You could talk about some of the transfer portal additions they made on the offensive line. Two things that we're big fans of heading into 2024. But I think by far the reason to believe in Arkansas in 2024, if they do take that step, it's going to be replacing and using Bobby Petrino as the offensive coordinator. I don't know if there was a worse offensive coordinator performance than what we saw for Arkansas in 2023. I think it gets meaningfully better with Bobby Petrino. Want to dive into, a few things that I think we can look for as Arkansas kicks off 2024. Really excited to get into it. Now, before we do, to the Arkansas fans, would love to hear how you guys are feeling about this matchup. And I think most importantly, okay, is Arkansas going to win by 55 plus points? You can throw that in the comment section, but I think I am a little bit more concerned with what are we looking for from both sides of the football during this opener against Arkansas-Pine Bluff, especially going into Oklahoma State during week 2. Excited to get into it. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. And I want to start with a little schematic talk about this Arkansas offense where, we talked about this storyline during the offseason. You go back to Arkansas in 2023, they had only 1,100 yards after the catch all season in the 2023 year. You look at how that stacks up to a lot of other Power 5 programs. Take a look at Oregon. They had over 3,300 yards after the catch. What does that tell us about this Arkansas offense last year? They really failed to get the football in space to their playmakers on the outside. If there's one thing we know Bobby Petrino is going to know how to do, what makes Bobby Petrino such a good offensive mind, he knows how to get his playmakers in space. He knows how to use his playmakers in kind of the best situation, something that Dan Enos just failed to do in 2023. So one of the things that I'm looking for is, hey, we think we have some difference makers on the outside. Are we making it a point to get them the football in space and let them operate after the catch? Because again, 1,100 yards after the catch all year in 2023, that simply is not going to cut it. So that's one of the things from a schematic standpoint I'm looking for. Secondly, I'm really fascinated with this Taylen Green, Bobby Petrino marriage, where you've seen Coach Petrino have a lot of success with quarterbacks like Taylen Green. And Taylen Green's fascinating. We kind of talked about this during the offseason too. At the very least, Taylen Green's going to be a fun quarterback to watch, right? You go back to his film at Boise State, it was a little bit of a roller coaster. The highs were really high. The lows were low at times as well. That being said, if Taylen Green plays more consistently with the highs and eliminates the lows, you're looking at a quarterback that can really have some juice in the SEC. So at the very least, you have a quarterback that you can win at a high level with if you find that kind of consistency. And that's something we're looking for, right? Taylen Green looked phenomenal in the spring game. You saw the big arm. You saw the athleticism. Those were the highs of Taylen Green. Can we see that more consistently from him during the 2024 season? You want to see it week 1 against Arkansas-Pine Bluff, where this is a team that, Taylen Green and this Arkansas offense can really build some confidence in terms of how explosive they can be in the 2024 year. And kind of outside of that, what is Bobby Petrino going to ask of Taylen Green? Are we going to get him outside the pocket, which I think that's where he's at his best, going back to the film at Boise State, letting him use his athleticism. He can throw on the run at a very high level. Again, I think one of the things Bobby Petrino, what makes him so good is he knows how to design an offense and really lean into his quarterback skill sets. And again, you go back to Dan Enos last year, it was kind of the polar opposite. Kind of just tried to make KJ Jefferson a quarterback that KJ really wasn't. I think Bobby Petrino is going to lean into Taylen Green. I think I'm most excited for, hey, how much are we going to run Taylen Green? Are we going to get him outside the pocket a lot? What kind of throws are we going to ask Taylen Green to make? He can push it down the field. How much are we going to push it down the field? That's kind of what I'm looking at. And again, are we going to see Arkansas empty the clip against Arkansas-Pine Bluff, knowing that you have to go on the road to Stillwater next week? No, probably not. You're not going to show all the plays that you want to show and all the looks and packages. That being said, you do want to show that, hey, we are a different offense with Taylen Green. And there are a lot of different ways we can attack opposing defenses. When Oklahoma State turns on that film to start prepping for Arkansas, they should be looking at a lot of different ways that they need to make sure their defense is on their P's and Q's heading into that week 2 matchup. I think the final storyline on Arkansas's offense is the offensive line. Now, we think the personnel for Arkansas's offensive line is significantly better than it was last year. Last year was a disaster. They were banged up. They were playing guys out of position, and that was pretty clear. They were, again, hurt. They weren't deep, and that really you saw an Arkansas offensive line that was just not good, right? They only ran the football for 3.6 yards per carry. There's 106 in the country. KJ Jefferson was sacked 13% of his dropbacks. That was 131st. I mean, those numbers are kind of bottom of the barrel. Now, we think the personnel is significantly better. I think what we're looking for is, how is the communication and chemistry? One of the big talking points we have in this era of the transfer portal is, hey, all right, we're going to build our offensive line. We're going to grab some guys through the transfer portal. Can they all come together and play good football immediately? That's the question. So you want to see, how are they picking up blitzes? Are they on their P's and Q's in terms of responsibilities, not blowing assignments? And then some of the combo blocks. Like, what's the chemistry? How are we working up to linebackers? You want to go see the offensive line that we know is much more talented than it was in 2023. You want to go see them execute on the offensive line. That's probably the last thing we're looking at. Going to the defensive side of the football, I want to start at the off-ball linebacker position. Again, I think this might be a hot take, but I think a lot of Arkansas fans, as we've talked about this in the offseason, kind of agree with this. Yeah, you lose Chris Paul, you lose Jaheim Thomas, 2 guys that led Arkansas in tackles last year. They were solid linebackers in the SEC. One of the maybe knocks I have is, I don't know if they were difference makers at the off-ball linebacker position. You have Brad Spence coming in as going to be a sophomore. You're bringing a guy like Xavier Sawyer from Georgia. Look, Brad Spence, he's going to be a difference maker. Xavier Sawyer has the potential to be a difference maker. I think what I'm most excited for is seeing these linebackers, get a little bit more downhill, make their plays at or behind the line of scrimmage a little bit more consistently. You go back to Arkansas with these linebackers last year, it just seemed like, yeah, they would make the tackles, but they weren't necessarily creating 2nd and 9s. They were more creating 2nd and 6s. And Arkansas kind of struggled to have those difference makers at the off-ball linebacker spot. They're not proven commodities like Jaheim Thomas and Chris Paul Jr. are. That being said, I think they could be a better linebacker duo than what you saw. And then I want to see the depth on the defensive line. I think this Arkansas defensive line is one of the better units in the SEC. And I think that's kind of a talking point that's kind of flying under the radar. Obviously, you have a guy like Landon Jackson. I'm going to go to Anton Jukic. Like, we know Landon Jackson is going to be a dude. And we kind of fully expect Landon Jackson to dominate week 1 here. What does Anton look like? This is a guy that is jumping from the FCS to the SEC, a guy that I love the film at Albany. But again, line of scrimmage players jumping up. Those are the question marks. He dealt with some injuries during spring and fall camp. It sounds like he had a really good finish to fall camp. This kid is a heavy-handed defensive lineman that can be present in the run game. How does he look? You have a couple young cats on this Arkansas defensive line, whether they're sophomores or true freshmen, that we expect to be difference makers too. You want to see some of that depth emerge on the defensive line. We all like to talk about Landon Jackson. He is one of the better football players in the SEC, but when you talk about what makes Georgia or Alabama's line of scrimmage play so successful over the last couple of years, it wasn't just about the starters. It was about the 2 and 3 deep, right? When you are giving your big bodies a blow on the sideline, do you have adequate depth to come in and not really give you that drop off? I think Arkansas has the possibility and capability of being that kind of defensive line unit. Do want to see that, kind of in action for this Arkansas program. We'll wrap it up there. Again, I think we're going to dive a lot deeper into the Oklahoma State-Arkansas matchup. We'll obviously get in the film on Arkansas against Arkansas-Pine Bluff. Not going to be a ton of massive takeaways, but we're going to get a feel, especially on the offensive side of football, what this unit is going to be. We'll close it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.